Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking about Andrew Yang and specifically how people are paid for jobs in America, and the biggest part of labor that we have not started to talk about, which is two parts of labor that we haven't really started to talk about, but how are jobs paid for in our society, right? What payment is someone receiving for doing a job? And then also, what do we do with jobs that many people desperately want, right? And this conversation really hasn't really started, right? So let's talk about it. All right. So I'm a huge tabletop role-playing game fan. I own every single edition, first edition, second edition, third edition, fourth edition, and fifth edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is the first tabletop role-playing game. A lot of people don't know this, but the tabletop role-playing game community is extremely deep. There are many game designers. There are probably between 10 and 20 million tabletop role-playing game players in the world right now. And I would guess there's probably 10 to 20,000 designers, easily, maybe a lot more, right? And so right now, and the reason why I'm talking about this, just so you're aware, this is absolutely apropos, because I believe that the tabletop role-playing game creation community, the product and the supply and the demand of tabletop role-playing games has a lot of really important lessons for Andrew Yang to learn. And then there's some huge questions I think that Andrew Yang is going to have to answer. Now, there's a legitimate question right here. Why does Andrew Yang have to answer these? Why not, Bernie Sanders or Amy Klobuchar or Cory Booker? Well, here's why. Everyone but Andrew Yang is using an archaic legacy economics model, right? And Andrew Yang is using a model for the future. UBI opens a door to a modern economy, right? And that to me is absolutely incredible. I really believe, Andrew Yang, he has creative adaptive intelligence and he has a generational mind, right? I think he has a mind that we might only see once in a generation, right? And the more I think about his candidacy and what he's looking to accomplish, it's truly staggering. It's just staggering how he is moving forward, right, in the world and what he's attempting to do in America. UBI, as he structured it, right, $1,000 a month for every single American, right? If this works, this could be a model for 50 countries throughout the world. If this works, right, it's huge. It's Babe Ruth walking up to the plate. And not just, and so when Babe Ruth would walk to the plate, he had decisions, right? Am I going to bunt and get a first base? Am I going to go for a second? Am I going to go for a third base? Am I going to go for a home run? Am I going to try to knock the ball beyond the wall, right? Or with Babe Ruth, he could say, am I going to try to knock the ball out of the stadium? And that's the level Yang is playing at, right? UBI is an attempt at a modern economy. Everybody else is playing checkers, and Yang is playing chess. Like his candidacy is not to see who wins an election. It's to see what we use, right? What Americans use to build a modern economy, and what the world may use for a third of its governments in the future, right? This is trying to knock the ball out of the stadium. If this works, it changes everything, right? But it also opens up right now massive questions about labor, right? And I saw this morning when I saw an absolutely fascinating thread on, that's a collection of tweets on Twitter. Twitter is a robust community. I'm continuing to grow in respect for Twitter and just the awesome conversations that happen within Twitter. And there's this guy named Swordsfall, and Swordsfall is there's a person named Swordsfall. I don't even know the gender. Sorry. So Swordsfall is a tabletop role-playing game content creator, And Swordsfall made this specific post today, and it said, if you're a content creator for TRPGs and you're saying, I don't care about the money, I'm not trying to get rich, stop it. You need to stop this right now. Right? And then Swordsfall made this long thread and said, people who just want to create tabletop role-playing game content and are lowballing their ask for the writing work they're doing, the artwork they're doing, the layout work they're doing, all of this, when they are doing this, they're making a major problem. They're making a problem specifically for content creators who are trying to make a living at this, right? And I thought, wow, this is absolutely fascinating, and it is fascinating, right? So here's the issue, right? Right now, there are, like 10, 20,000 tabletop role-playing games designers, a ton of them, just because of the structure of tabletop role-playing game design, because of the structure of tabletop role-playing games, like Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons was the first. There's easily 1,000 good tabletop role-playing games beyond Dungeons & Dragons, right? There's absolutely minimum 500 great tabletop role-playing games. And there are a huge amount of tabletop role-playing games because they're so fun to make. They're just incredibly fun. And they attract smart, creative, adaptive people like honey, right? Now, of course, I've made a tabletop role-playing game. I sold that tabletop role-playing game to a small company, and it's in queue right now, waiting to get released, right? It's very, very difficult to publish a tabletop role-playing game. I'm in the process of it right now. It's incredibly difficult. It's a hard thing, and the reason why is everybody wants to do this work, right? So it's incredibly difficult to actually get this work. And the reason why is everybody wants to do it, right? Within the TRPG community, there's tens of thousands, like 10, 20,000 designers minimum, right? And so what's happening right now is artists, writers, layout experts, right? They go into these games and they see something exciting that they're exciting at, and what should be the rate for the work that's being done, right? The rate should be, right? And the rate should be, most of these people are incredibly talented, and they should be getting $20, $30, $40 an hour for their work. But often people are taking rates that are $2.50, $7.50 an hour, and nobody's saying, hey, I'm going to pay you $7.50 an hour. What happens is they'll say, hey, here, I'm going to give you $3,000, I'm going to give you $2,000 for this project, and then the person just put so many hours of work into the work that they end up getting paid $2.50 an hour, like $7.50 an hour, and then those numbers are a little off. But this is a major problem in tabletop role-playing games, is creators who are trying to get paid for this work and make a living at it are finding it almost impossible. I'm not sure there's even 100 people in the world who make their full-time living working on tabletop role-playing games, right? The vast majority are it's a second source of income at best, and for some it's literally a hobby. And the issue is they don't care about the money. They don't want to get rich. They want their names attached to a high-profile tabletop role-playing game. It's really fascinating, and it's a problem. It's a problem in the community, right? And the reason why is this labor is desired. People desperately want this labor, right? And all of these layout experts, these writers, these artists, in order for them to get their name attached to one of these high-end tabletop role-playing games, they're at the mercy of publishers, right? Or they have to do the whole thing themselves, and they have to be the publisher. So it's really challenging, right? So what's this got to do with Andrew Yang, right? So I'm sorry. Swordsfall says, hey, you're killing us, right? All these people are saying you've got to demand you deserve to be paid for your work, right? You do a job, you get paid, right? And he's just trying. And then So Swordsfall is also saying I was a labor representative, right? I was a union rep. And and I'm telling you, I've been in negotiations. You must get paid, right? But the reality is that the part that I think Swordsfall is forgetting is, like, many people who are attracted to tabletop role-playing games, and there's actually a term for it. It's called Sotropog. I actually came up with it. It's a software tabletop role-playing game. It's somebody who works in software development who's making content for tabletop role-playing games. They're common as dirt, like devs, testers, program managers, project managers who work in software tech are crazy attracted to making tabletop role-playing games, right? The Venn diagram is ridiculous, right? There's just so much overlap, right? And the reality is when most of these people go into software tabletop role-playing games, the reality is software tabletop role-playing games, the tabletop role-playing games is such a niche market that these software developers, software testers, software program managers, there's like 1% chance any of them could ever even equal their current salary doing tabletop role-playing games, because it's such a niche market, and tech is so expertise is so valuable today that it has to be a labor of love for these people. And there's thousands of them. They're like, if you look at games that have been made by tabletop role-playing games and look at how many people have worked in tech, the overlap is ridiculous. It's a lot of the pie, right? It's a ton, right? And so for these people, they are going directly against what Sourcefall is saying. They're literally, there's just thousands of people saying, I don't care about the money. I care about my name being on one of these high-profile tabletop role-playing games, and being attached to me, the name game designer, game artist, right? Game layout expert, right? And it's and one thing that I'm fascinated by, and I think that Andrew Yang needs to look at right quick, right? Because this is going to come up really soon when UBI is dropped, right? Is what do we do with this idea? How do we handle this new reality of, okay, we are moving forward. We have UBI. We are building a modern economy, not a legacy, archaic, artifact economy. We're moving away from that, right? We're leaving the rest of the pack behind. No, absolutely no one else in the Democrat candidate party is talking about a modern economy. They're all talking about tweaking a legacy economy to be useful and adaptable and helpful, right? So that, that's a very specific thing, right? And so basically you have to really figure out, well, how does this work, right? How do you actually manage this issue? Like, so, and one of the things that's going to come up right away is, okay, we have all these jobs that need to be done, but guess what? We have a ton of jobs that do not need to be done. They don't need to be done, right? And so that is really, really fascinating in that, what do you do with that? What do you do with that reality of how do you now rework this economy, right? For dealing with, how are you making an economy with jobs that people want to do that don't need to be done? A perfect example of this is tabletop role-playing design. There are 500 great tabletop role-playing game design. The world does not need a single additional one, right? But people desire to do this. They want to do this, and they absolutely want to do it for their main pay gig, right? The desire to do it is so high, right? And there are so many people who desperately want to do it. And so one of the things I think that Andrew Yang, and right now, this whole video is me defining the issue. I think you could do 50 videos on this, right? You could talk about, you could write white papers about this, right? Of right now, in the legacy economy, in the economy that Bernie is talking about, that Buttigieg is talking about, that Warren is talking about, they're so far behind Yang on what a modern economy looks like. They don't even have the same language, right? But Yang gets it. He is out there. Like, he is way ahead of the pack. He's the only one actually talking about a modern economy. Everyone else is talking about a legacy economy tweaked, jammed to make it function in a modern world, right? But UBI is an approach at a truly functional, modern economy. Now, when you approach that, you've got to answer some real questions that Swordsfall is bringing up, right? What do you do with jobs that pay more than money, right? Tabletop role-playing game designer pays dirt, right, in money, but it pays like it's just boop, 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 boop. Like, it's like, dollars like just fanned out of your hand when it comes to nerd street cred, right? Like, you are the dopest Mac on the street. Like, if when you roll up in Gen Con or Origins and you've got a hot new game, Bow down, man. Like that, like people desperately want that. That is a payment, right? Nerd street cred is a dollar that people want. You want to talk about Bitcoin? Nerd street cred is real, right? People desperately want it, right? And they are willing to trade hundreds or even thousands of hours of their lives for it. And right now, we have no structure to deal with this, right? There are jobs that need to be done. There are jobs that it would be nice for the society if it was done. And there are jobs that are not necessary. They are completely unnecessary, but people want to do them, right? Only Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang is the only candidate today who can look at our economy and say, yeah, Garabay's right. How do we figure out what jobs actually pay in, right? Because if people are pursuing jobs and they desperately want to do these jobs, then there's something more than money there, right? And that's the first thing that has to be answered is in our economy today, right? In an American robust, abundant economy, let's start talking about what jobs actually pay in. Money is just the start, right? Honor could be something that a job pays, right? Extra time and flexibility is something that a job could pay, right? Solace. You could have a job where you get some money and you get some solace, right? You could have a job where you are actually aiding people every single day, and when you aid them, they say thank you, right? Right now, that's really challenging in my work, right? I build parts of other projects, and when they're released, they're so far removed from me that the people who receive the value of that work have never ever seen me or known my name. It's impossible for the people at the end of the line to say, Scott Garibay, I really appreciate the work you're doing. But there are people who get that every single day where there's a person say, thank you so much for your help for me. What's the value of that, right? So I think Andrew Yang is the first candidate to understand that jobs pay in something more than money, right? And he can help us build an actual, real, right, economy that recognizes value beyond money, right? I don't think any other candidate in the 2020 Democrat primary even has the language to discuss these questions. They're so far behind Yang, right? And so I'm so excited about the probability of, about Yang becoming our president, because it is hope for J. Scott Garibay in Pennsylvania. It's hope for every person in this nation of America. And frankly, it's hope for a third of the countries on the planet who I think would follow right behind the U.S. And if it was successful, they'd drop this thing like an ice cube into bourbon. It'd like, boom, done, finished. Actually, I don't drink, so I don't know if you put ice in bourbon. Sorry. Sometimes my analogies skitter off the board, right? I'm a teetotaler, by the way. All right, so now that I've offended you all about bourbon, that is my point. Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to hear what you think. What do you think? Do you think jobs pay in something more than money? What are the other currencies, right? Is it honor? Is it time? Is it solace? Is it nerd cred, right? Is it nerd street cred? What are the other currencies? Let me know in the comments below. I would love that. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Please consider liking and subscribing.